So in this next video, we're going to talk about desperate tenants and how they can affect you and get you in a lawsuit and how to avoid it. When it comes to property management, if you haven't been sued, you haven't been doing this long enough or have enough business. I've been managing properties for over 20 years, and I'm going to share with you a lot of tips and techniques that will avoid lawsuits. So the whole purpose of this class is to help you identify what can create a lawsuit and what is most likely to create a lawsuit. Desperate tenants I have found to be the #1 source of our lawsuits, and the reason why they become the #1 source is because they become desperate. They've lost their job and have plenty of time to watch those attorney ads on TV.
Are you home during the day because you were injured at work, school, museum, church, Iraq, elevator plumbing, uneven sidewalk, hit by a foul ball, hit by a fair ball, or I did a wrong viewing party? The first one you said. Call me, Maxwell Flick, at 555-555-5555. Wait, what was the number after the first 3 fives but before the last 6 fives?
Seriously, these tenants are at home all day, not employed, not making money. And they don't have any hope of making money anytime soon. They're desperate and they want a quick fix. They're going to try to figure out a way to immediately fix their problem. They're going to think of things that are broken and try to use everything in their little brain to get out of their situation. My experience is that every single one of our lawsuits came from tenants who were ones that were not employed. And by the way, 80% of those were single parents. Identifying a desperate tenant enables you to see that big old bus barreling down the road before it hits you. So when you get a response from their late payment and they sound something like they lost their job, they got in an accident, their kids are extremely sick or injured, or they lost their significant other, or they lost a supportive relative, or the government funding ended. If you get any of those type of statements when they are late, you need to take immediate action. Most tenants live paycheck to paycheck and have very little resources to recover from any of these major events. You need to step in immediately and become a solution way before it becomes a problem. Desperate tenants make poor decisions, and you're here to help them solve their problem before it becomes too late, before you have to do an eviction, and before they design a way to do a slip and fall on your property. So when you get that response after a tenant has paid rent late, that they are having one of those 6 or 7 major events, your immediate conclusion, your immediate reaction is to help them leave your property gracefully. There's no reason to make someone suffer when you can do a transition that doesn't hurt your owner. Nearly all the situations where we provided an opportunity for the tenant to leave, our owners won in the long run. And it usually just starts with a very simple sentence like, "Let me help you find a place less expensive," or "Let me help you find a roommate." There is no reason to suffer. When you offer this type of dialogue, it makes you an ally, not an adversary. By helping others out of their financial struggle, you're helping them and your owner. Sadly, no matter what you do, no how much effort you put into getting excellent owners, screening naughty tenants, and helping desperate tenants, you're eventually going to get sued. There's just no way around it. There's no foolproof way of doing it. Lawsuits kind of come in 3 categories. The first one that's the most evil and the most damaging are your slip and falls. The second common one is going to be involving your security deposit dispositions. And then your last one is going to be involved in evictions. So we're going to kind of cover those in detail. So in the last 20 years, I've really only had one legitimate slip and fall. And the owner and I were gracious to settle before it went to court, and the tenant was very reasonable. 95% of your slip and falls are not legitimate. When you get one of these, you need to notify your insurance company right away. Having your brokerage additionally insured is a must. When you get sued, their high-priced attorney is going to be the one representing you and the owner in court. Tenants don't have a pot to piss in, so when they sue you, they're going to have to retain an attorney on contingency. This means the attorneys are only going to take the case if it's promising and if your owner is solvent. Here are the 3 conditions in which you're going to get a slip and fall. 1, the owner has a lot of unprotected assets. 2, the owner is easy to find. And 3, the case has a lot of merit. Needless to say, proper maintenance of your property is your #1 defense against slip and falls. But when you do get them, your maintenance records are going to be essential. You're going to get subpoenaed for these, and you want to make sure you have all the dates and times and invoices along with your photos. So if you do maintenance logs, you constantly monitor your tenants, you get before and after photos from your vendors, and you enlist your vendors into your company and integrate that with spreadsheets and chain of events, you're going to be able to mitigate a slip and fall. As you've probably figured out by now, I'm a video freak. We have video cameras everywhere at our office, and on our multifamily properties we had video. So video is a huge tool to prevent lawsuits. And I'm going to show you an example of a tenant who came from a multifamily who was desperate, a single unemployed parent, and she claimed to have fallen from a loose piece of concrete on the steps. And he managed to get video of her running down the street, and then here's video of her entering the building with no symptoms.
And I moved, and then that's when you was trying, whatever the case might be, it was eviction or whatever the case might be. I don't know what it was, but I had paid rent or something, and I don't know what about the case. The problem was I was coming down the stairs, and 2 of your stairs went in, and it was already damaged when I moved there, but the bricks fell when I was coming down the stairs. I still have the bricks.
Okay.
And it hurt me, and I don't want to go to court, take it that long, but I would need some kind of help from you with the doctor bills if you can help me, because I was trying to be what is it called? Didn't want to take what you were trying to give me before, because I thought the pain was going to go away. I'm being honest, but the pain ain't went away since. And they said, the doctor said, if my leg it broke again, it is nowhere in replacing these bones. It's going to be broke. I'm going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I could go back down here and try to get some money, but I'd rather come talk to you in your face because you're a reasonable person.
Right.
And I know you're a reasonable person. I said, I'm just going to come talk to him because me and him ain't never had no problem, no yelling, cussing, and, you know, all that crazy stuff.
Right. Yeah, so, I mean, I got like $100 on me I can give you.
Unfortunately, I just have more pain, Jim.
I don't have 2,000. I can give you 100.
Okay, well, could we talk some more? You can give me a call. I got a new number.
You're gonna have to contact your attorney, sweetie.
Okay.
So I would like to go through the anatomy of a $350,000 slip and fall lawsuit that we lost. I think it's worth sharing because I can probably give you some ideas of how you can avoid getting into the same situation. We had a tenant who lived in a multi-family building who claimed her foot went through the balcony. She was 3 months behind in rent. I inherited her, so I wasn't able to screen her to prevent her from getting in there to begin with. And she was throwing a party with 10 other people the night before her foot went through the balcony. So after 3 years of legal wrangling, State Farm paid out $350K to the tenant, and it cost me at least 20 hours of my time and dozens of sleepless nights. I should also mention that I never received evidence that her foot actually went through the balcony. To this day, I'm not convinced her foot went through the balcony. But here we are. I want to go over the 4 things that I think we did wrong. Number 1 is the owner prevented me from evicting this poor old woman, despite the fact that she was a hoarder and had completely destroyed the unit. The owner didn't want me to evict her because he had to rehab it. So We talked earlier about owners who are leveraged and tenants who are desperate. Second is the owner insisted on using his handyman, who wasn't very good. The custodian that we had at that fourplex was awful. He was never on our side in this whole case. And lastly, I should have personally inspected the repair. We had a repair at that balcony prior to her foot going in, and I should have been there to confirm that the repair was done correctly. So what did we do right? Well, the number one thing is we were additionally insured. If you learned anything from these 6 videos, being additional insured is everything. Thank goodness. The $350K awarded to the plaintiff came from State Farm. I didn't pay a penny. The second thing I think we did really well is we had a lot of good photos of the repairs before and after. But because we used a handyman and not a licensed general contractor, State Farm settled. The second type of lawsuit is frequent, involving your move out. And they're usually not as evil as they slip and fall, but they're frequent and they consume a lot of your time. So we're going to chat about how to mitigate those. So before your tenant moves out, I think it's important that you constantly drip on your tenants and offer them opportunities to buy a house and remind them of how awesome you are. You want to explain to them how they can get all the security deposit back. This is an example of an email that I sent out to all my tenants that are moving out. And there's a page there that explains some tips and benefits of being prepared. And then it also is very specific about what we're looking for when we do the move out. We want all the mystery explained before they move out so there's no drama after they move out. If you're fair about your disposition, then you're not going to get that many lawsuits related to those move outs and security deposits. Probably the number one defense you have against that is to be very transparent about how much the owner is paying and how much the tenant is paying to get the property back up to rentable standards. Tenants feel much better about the disposition when they can see how much the owner is paying and how much they are paying. And the total expenses, of course, should add up to your vendor expenses. The reason why you want that to add up to your vendor expenses is so that when you do end up in court, you can show the judge how the distribution was done and how much you actually spent. This will go a long way towards building credibility with the judge and winning the suit. You can see here a very simple spreadsheet. We have a spreadsheet template that we use for our security deposit dispositions, and it's also included in their formal letter when they do the move out. And it does all the math for you, and you can actually just copy and paste the cells in your email. Makes it super easy to finish out a move out. Another technique that I find very successful is sharing that same email with both the tenant and the owner and making certain that they both agree to that distribution, and kind of try to portray myself as a referee and trying to be fair. No one's absolutely happy with the decision, but it's easier to get through the mess when everyone sees how you're distributing the money, and this mitigates your being dragged into court. We had an example where a tenant sued me for $200 over some broken blinds and a refrigerator handle and some other minor issues. And it was kind of comical because the judge shook his head and asked why we were there for $200. But in any event, the judge ruled in my favor, case closed, and we moved on. In some cases, you're not going to make everybody happy, and it pays to shell out a Benjamin here and there. So I want to kind of go over some of the benefits of being lenient on your move-outs. Number one, since you did an excellent job screening and placing your tenant, that tenant with good credit is likely to become your next buyer. So shelling out $100 to pay for a broken blind or something similar can go a long way towards a huge commission. Second is you won't be spending an hour in court or looking for a parking space and sitting through those painful cases at justice court. You have no idea how painful that is because you are there for hours. Number three, there's a good chance they'll come back to you after having a bad rental experience. So if they don't buy a house and they go somewhere else to rent and they come back, they're going to call you. Number four, you won't get a love letter from the real estate division or get dragged into a commission hearing to see all your dirty laundry. Number five is that you're not going to be spending hours going back and forth, sending nasty emails and text messages between you and the tenant and the owner. Number six, my favorite, is you're not going to get a lot of nasty reviews. And seven, your owner is not going to get wrapped up in his drama, and you're going to look like a rock star. So happy owners are going to hire you to sell their home where you have another opportunity to make a commission. So in summary, a Chris Benjamin can earn you up to $20,000 in commissions. So don't be stingy. Well, as you know, being a property manager isn't always peaches and cream. Sometimes you're going to run into scenarios. Well, as you know, being a property manager isn't all peaches and cream. Sometimes you're going to run into scenarios where your tenant's naughty and they haven't paid rent and you're going to have to get rid of them. So we're going to kind of go through some of the steps in which you get rid of a tenant gracefully. The key word is gracefully, because what you don't want to happen is this thing to go sideways at the very end where somebody gets injured or you become responsible for personal property. When a tenant becomes late, we always hit them first up with a little simple text or email, what's up with the rent? If they stick their head in the sand and do not respond, we post a pay or quit notice. And after the pay and quit notice has been posted, we simply reach out to them and offer incentives for them to leave gracefully. The message also is something to the effect, hi, Mr. Tenant, your summary eviction is scheduled for Tuesday next week. You can avoid all that drama and keep an eviction off your record if you just allow us to help you find an alternative lodging. If your summary eviction is granted, then you want to offer the tenant another opportunity to leave gracefully. Something to the effect, hey, Mr. Tenant, your summary eviction has been granted and your lockout will be next Friday. It's not too late to avoid an eviction on your record if we can meet with me, say, tomorrow and surrender the keys. There could be a whole course dedicated to court cases and evictions, but for the purpose of this particular video, we're just going to talk about your efforts to offer those tenants an opportunity to leave before there's an eviction on their record. In some cases at the courthouse, the tenants will cave in and say they're done. And then you want to make arrangements to pick up the keys to avoid the eviction. So at this point in the game, you're trying to have the tenants leave gracefully and to avoid drama. The drama can be avoided to avoid damage to the property and damage to everybody else. You don't want their stuff, so make it easy for them to make arrangements to get their things after the move out. So I usually send a message similar to Mr. Tenant, your lockout is tomorrow. Be sure to get all your essentials out before the constable arrives. We will make arrangements to get the rest of your stuff after the lockout. Since we are required by law to store their crap for 30 days, you want to do everything you can to encourage them to take as much as they can prior to the lockout. And then after the lockout has been accomplished, you want to reach out to them again. And I usually send a message, something to the effect, Mr. Tenant, what day is convenient for you and your friends to come get all of your stuff? I can give you a couple of hours to accomplish this task. Now, I do cheat a little bit. If they need 6 hours to get their stuff out, I give it to them. But when I lead with I'm giving them a short period of time, I'm giving them the impression I'm not going to loiter all day long and wait for them. Through this whole process, you want to treat your evicted tenants with respect and sympathy. You can't even imagine what it would be like to be evicted. It has to be a terrible experience for them. So you just really want to do the best you can to act professionally. When you do this, they're less likely to damage the property if you're nice. They're less likely to sue you for property loss or whatever they can dream up with. They're more likely to not stalk you or your owner. And so no matter what you do, never ever raise your voice or threaten them. About 12 years ago, I evicted a family, and I did everything I could to help them through that whole process. And I treated them with a lot of respect through the whole experience. And 9 years later, the fellow recognized me at Starbucks and introduced himself as the person I evicted. And you can imagine how apprehensive I was. Fortunately, he really thanked me for how I treated him and his family and how I really tried to help him out. And we eventually became friends. And this is how you want your stories to end. So if you end up with a large amount of personal property, there's a couple of things you can do to get the place ready again. If it's a house, we just put all the stuff in the garage. If it's a multifamily, you have to pile it up in the middle of the living room. And during the event, of course, we try to get a handyman to help them move. And, Benjamins go a long way. So throw a few Benjamins at them if that helps. You want to video all your evictions because they can come back and haunt you years later when a rent dodger thinks of something to hang you on. If the tenant abandons property, be certain you get a confirmation in a text or an email. And I usually say something like, "Hi, Mr. Tenant. You left a bed, some trash, and some other personal items. Do you want to pay for storage or can we just give this to charity?" You don't want to make the mistake I made years ago when we tossed out a roach-infested couch from a multifamily building. We should have stored that filthy couch because the tenant got a picture of it in the garbage can, sued us $4,000 for this heirloom couch, and won. Fortunately, we won on appeal because the tenant didn't show up. At the end, it cost me about $500 in attorney's fees, but it was a lesson well learned. In some cases, it does pay to have a moving company move the tenant belongings out. Here is an example where we had a tenant who was out of control. He had about $60,000 worth of stolen goods in his house, and it took 2 semis to unload it. But I knew he would pay the storage fees because there was a lot of stuff in there that was of value. And we had a huge amount of drama with this tenant, and the poor owner had a lot of sleepless nights. I prefer to handle the transaction out here. So you paying in cash or cashier's check?
I got cash, son.
Okay.
Cash. I don't see no where. Who's the pocket?
It's in there.
Pocket right here?
All your stuff is in there.
Okay, I know it's in there, but it needs to be out here.
No.
Yeah,
Not until you pay.
What's that?
If you don't pay in full right now, we're both leaving.
Hey, man, hey, you do. I'm here to get my stuff. Bro.
Adios.
I'm here.
So he's really dangerous. So we removed his items. This young man did a great job of storing his stuff in that unit. So by law, in order to get his stuff, he's got to pay for the move.
And he's not willing to do that? Is that what he says?
Well, he keeps stringing us along. He's like, "Oh, I've got the money." We show up, then he goes, "I don't want to pay it." So we're not opening up those doors until he pays.
Okay. And so he needs to pay, and then you guys will give him his stuff?
We don't want his stuff.
Yeah. We want him to change his code.
So in this video, we covered a lot about desperate tenants. Number one is to recognize a desperate tenant when they're coming along. The desperate tenants are the ones that are going to give you a headache and get you into a lawsuit. So not only are you going to be able to recognize them and assist them in moving along, you're going to do everything you can to do everything by the book so that they don't bite you in a lawsuit or drag you into the real estate division.